don't get too excited for Delta Force. It's only an alpha, a ways off from console and mobile release, but the hype for this game is growing fast. Already 1 million wish lists they just posted. So what is happening here? Well, they just started their PC alpha test a few days ago, and it's working. This is one of the most promising early access extraction shooters that I have seen. It's already more done than most launch games in its alpha, and players of this niche are hungry for content. And it's a surprisingly large niche that is often talked about as one with the potential to be the next big genre. You may not have heard of it. Maybe you just saw a clip, maybe even tried to watch some of the gameplay on it, especially with how many extraction style shooters are out and coming out though. There's a lack of patience to wade through them all, combined with this being from a development team out in Asia that most people have never heard of. It's no wonder that it's mostly flown under the radar and there's a lot of skeptics. So I want to catch you up and share some of my first impressions after playing the game, especially being a big player within this niche. First though, do you remember the buzz around Hazard Zone? When Battlefield 2042 was coming out, they said they were going to also have this extraction mode on top of this incredible multiplayer. It brought a huge extra layer of hype to 2042 before launching and letting everyone down. This game is basically fulfilling that hype, though, in a way that I really wish it was Battlefield. Now, many thought that DMZ and Call of Duty was going to steal all the thunder within this category once it released. This is essentially what happened with Battle Royales. After Battlefield fumbled Firestorm's release, their Battle Royale, Call of Duty knocked it out of the park with Blackout and then went crazy with Warzone. So to see DMZ being promised, everybody was looking at this thing. It did get much better after a few updates until it turned pay to win, with updates getting worse before ultimately becoming completely unsupported for almost a year now and no return in sight. This category, of course, is the casual extraction shooter or casual Tarkov. At this point, we all know what an extraction shooter is: completing PvE missions solo or with the squad against AI, and then trying to survive your way to an exit. These games, though, also feature PvP. While working towards those goals, you never know when you're going to run into others trying to kill you, take you for everything that you have, with, of course, the rush of finding huge value anywhere in the raid or taking out another squad for what they got, giving you kind of that battle royale feel without having to have it be all about getting kills, since you can always just sneak through the raid in that ultimate stealth fantasy and find an exit. So far, all of these games had failed at delivering kind of a complete package. That's where Delta Force is showing up with promises, not just in gameplay, but the game is free, saying outright that they're prioritizing player experience over revenue, which of course a company would say, and especially early on, they got to get players, but so far they are prioritizing it, even delaying just the alpha test because of problems out a month. And now that it's out, this has been the least buggy alpha that I've ever played, and the most complete. The game's also coming to console and mobile with crossplay and cross progression. They even say it's coming to the last gen. It's the full recipe for a massive audience, but it's also a monumentally big challenge, and that's where I still have a lot of my doubts. Although some games are executing on this, it's one of the biggest things that COD has going for it. But there's so much extra demand for a game like this on console still that I feel like a lot of games are just saying this for a bunch of extra hype. The alpha is not out on console, it's just PC. Right after on their site Q&A, it says the game's coming out in 2024. They list all these platforms, but they're also going wide with their offering, essentially having 3 games in one. The extraction mode will be the focus to many, but it also has a giant style war that is basically Battlefield, with vehicles, destructible environment. For many, this is likely going to be their main interest of the game, especially Battlefield players. It even has the 4 class bases of older Battlefields: Medic, Assault, Recon, and Engineer. This is what 2042 actually reverted to with updates after its launch, but they also still have special gadgets and operators within each of those classes who play roles. Battlefield, though, has made so many updates that if you really did want to play this style of game, that probably still is a more full experience, although of course you have to pay a full price for that. This game's offering it for free. Quick match into a game, and they even have ranked playlists. Something that I already think is better is the progression system. In this, as you gain XP in the modes, you can just apply it to whatever weapon that you want. So you don't need to endlessly grind with a specific weapon to level it up, but play with any weapon and then apply the XP that you earn to level up another gun and get the attachments for it. But what Battlefield doesn't even have is a campaign. And they are doing an epic one based on Black Hawk Down. This alone could attract a giant audience if it's solid, right? They're essentially taking the best bits of many very popular games and putting them all into one place, and then taking the feedback of what players have found frustrating about those games and built upon it, which is a great premise. But now, after getting my hands on it, how does it actually play? Especially the extraction mode, how does it stack up with everything else that is actually out there? It is a trios game, which you can queue with friends or randoms, or even go no-fill as a solo or duo in trios. It also has all the classic casual shooter elements. HUD for your teammates, no friendly fire, a compass, tac map, even a full map with a pinging system to help with comms, hit markers on the shots you're hitting, even headshot ones, including knock icons, kill alerts, kill feeds, so you know what's going on without necessarily needing to communicate. And on top of that, you can hear footsteps in this game, like from quite far away. Even the AI move like players do, so there was a lot of times that I've been uncertain of who I'm fighting or if this is a player pushing me. I like as well, the AI is not incredibly dangerous. It can chip away at your armor and health, but definitely hasn't been as big of a threat or nuisance as the DMZ AI. And they have a full looting system, the Tetris style backpack with all the slots combined with weight management that you need to account for. It, however, removes the need for food and water management, simplifying things by getting rid of contact headsets or even having grenades and smokes that you have to carry with you. But it keeps all of the weapon customization with tons of attachments and even different ways you can configure it. I immediately noticed, though, all of the quality of life improvements in this. Items that you loot actually show the price value. There's even color indicators for rare, epic, and legendary loot. Same thing with armor and ammo. It's color-coded, so it makes everything far easier to understand. So only need the ammo, no magazine management. Just upgrading your weapon's magazine to, say, a 45-rounder upgrades all the magazines when you reload ammo into it. If you have that grenade or smoke, they're part of the class that you are playing as and recharged. They're not even lootable. When you're injured, you'll still get debuffs like bleeds that you do need to med, but even just mousing over it, you can click it and it'll take the appropriate med. There's also just less total different types of heals in this game to make it easier. Map UI shows the mission tasks that you have, the locations and objectives that you need to complete. Less looking stuff up online for everything that you need to do, and you aren't limited to just having 3 missions at a time. The whole game isn't like that, though. I have also seen multiple Easter eggs hidden around the game that you do have to solve and figure out yourself, and can still, of course, look up a guide on, with some big rewards for doing so. The map is also marked with where you need to extract and any requirements associated with it. There are even certain ones that you need to activate a switch to trigger an alarm that makes a door elsewhere open up. But so much of the misery for me of learning Tarkov and having to memorize maps, learn valuable loot, this game just teaches you and shows you, so you can focus on the game and combat. Going into raids, it even gives you a warning for any gear that you're missing, ammo or meds, and it's super fast to repair or buy anything before you go in. All of the UI is far more understandable. You loot a bag, it'll even auto-fold up, which does remove the potential for backpack stacking, which I always enjoyed, but it also just makes the entire experience easier. It's a little thing, but even just dragging an item onto another one will switch the positions of those items, rather than having to drag it over. It's just so much easier to organize and manage. And while you're going through missions, you want to go and check all of the items because you want to extract with as much money as you can to even sell on a player auction house. It could be used to upgrade your base, and all of those things that you get gives you a real sense of loss, dying with the value adding to the pressure that you're in. No unlimited best gun in the game on a 15-minute pay-to-win cooldown like DMZ. Building guns and attachments are also like putting on attachments in COD, but with more freedom. You could throw on every attachment if you had it or could afford it. In the extraction mode, you don't just unlock it and then it's good and you have it on. You have to actually acquire each piece and build your weapon. So you could hoard suppressors if you want, or rip them all off all of the fallen enemies that you kill and just stack them up. When you're trying to figure out how to put the weapon together, it just works when you click on it, with the menus actually directing you with what you need to buy or where to get it directly from the auction house. You don't need to look up a tutorial to figure out how to put a suppressor on a specific gun or what ammo will work with it. Even just selling items is so much more straightforward. Right from the stash or the bag, as long as you're out of raid, just right-click it, sell it. It'll even give you a quick comparison between the vendor price and the auction house. No mission management, just accept them all, and you can do them all whenever you're in the missions. There's even extra missions in the raid that you can pick up, similar to like a DMZ or Warzone contract, that gives you extra cash while you're in raid, and killing another player that completed their mission allows you to take all of the money they got from completing any of theirs. I've mainly only played with friends so far, and what's even better about that is when you're dying, you know, if it happens, wouldn't happen to me per se, but you don't get separated from your buddies. You still get to spectate them. First you get knocked, and you'll crawl, then you get finished off, but you are still resable for a few minutes period, seemingly once per raid, and you can spectate your squad. Even if you do die fully out, or you even extract first, you can spectate them without the risk of pulling all of your friends out, which I've had some traumatic experiences doing, unfortunately. Even pick up and carry your buddy as well as their loot box or enemies' loot boxes to go move it to a safer location. And if a teammate is dead, full out, can't be rezzed, you can even extract their gear, and doing so will automatically send it back to your friend. You don't have to go into the next raid, bring them their gear, and then all of you guys extract again to get it back. They also removed the scav system in a lot of these other games, but they replaced it with something that I think is even better. Basically just cheap preset loadouts that you could do a couple times per day, which would be like what you would bring in on a scav run, or basically a free AI character with a little bit of gear. Not even on a cooldown. Typically, that'd be like a 20-minute wait between those. You could just go in and do a couple light casual raids for the day if you want to, but not unlimited, since you only have a certain amount per day. I do think the healing and the armor system is a bit complex versus, of course, just standard easy plate system like what COD has. It increases your total health, but it does make taking damage more punishing, because replacing that armor and getting your durability back up on your armor is hard to do. They do have kits that you can put on during raid, which is awesome and new. I haven't seen that before, but there is also, of course, repairs outside of raid you can do back at base. And then taking damage does decrease your total hit points, but you can also suffer those bigger injuries like bleeding or bone damage that requires a surgery kit in order to repair. The nice thing, though, is you don't need splints, and there's not as many total heals as I mentioned before, or you don't even have to deal with like limbs being completely blacked out or healing this individual arm, leg, all the different pieces. You kind of just have one total health pool. Still a little complex, but at least easier to understand and work with. You also still have items that you can buff yourself with, like painkillers and stims. With the stamina system in the game, it does slow the overall game down, limiting the amount of movements that you can make. It takes a while for that to recharge, and the heavier that you are, the worse that's going to be and the faster it drains. Out of raid, you also have a base that you can walk around in, like a hideout or your forward operating base that you can upgrade, can make things for you. You can also trade in items for upgrades, buy those items off the auction house. Like, this whole thing is just so much more robust and well built. And there's even destructible environment. Certain classes can cut through fences. Explosives can be used to uncover locations. But I will say, I haven't seen much of the destructible environment. It looks like it is limited to specific locations, especially in the extraction mode. There's still a lot more than what I've seen in any other game. And they do have some interactable environment items as well that open up new routes for pushing buildings or even reveal certain secret locations. I'd say the newest spin for their element of this game, though, is that it is a class system within the extraction game. Those 4 classic Battlefield roles are in here too, and they have abilities, which I heard was one of the main concerns from a lot of the players who got it on the earlier tests that had played this. But after playing it myself, I don't really feel like this is going to be an issue. At least it hasn't been so far for me. None of these are really like superhero or mutant abilities. It's more staying on theme and extra tech that gives you a more specific role with trade-offs. For example, the healing pistol, which has a cool element. You can throw a smoke out, shoot into the pistol, and it makes like this healing cloud. It's pretty well done. Or there's a stun drone, an exosuit that increases your sprint speed for a short period of time, but they're all reduced by the cooldowns that they have, and it still leads to combat with gunfights. So mostly you can see big improvements on what we have seen from other games here, all put into one. And I think they're kind of trying to find the middle ground, while also, I would say, leaning on the casual side. You can focus more on getting your missions done, having fun, and playing the game without having to look everything up, while also being able to get into more PvP, and when in fights, focus on the fighting rather than on the menus. I do also want to mention there's another very similar game to this called Arena Breakout Infinite, filling a similar role kind of in the middle with a ton of these same quality life improvements too. In fact, that's also a mobile game that's already out. This is going to be PC, specifically early access, and I'll say that one seems to lean more on the hardcore side and is much more of a straight Tarkov copy with the quality of life improvements and made more understandable. Delta Force is really looking to be more of the complete package. So it sounds great, right? But what are some of the concerns that I have? First off, monetization, of course, is top of mind. They have to make money somehow on this. Pay to win wasn't part of DMZ in the beginning, but it quickly eroded the game once they started to creep those features in and make those what should have been features and part of the progress as only unlockable by paying. I doubt they would do that here, but it's to be seen. Wipes as well. In this game, it's very common to have 100% of your progress to be completely erased. So especially if you're new to this genre, this isn't like Prestiges where you get to voluntarily do this and you get a reward for it with a badge or whatever. Instead, it just resets like you've never played the game before. Some people love the exhilaration of the new experience and everybody kind of playing this game for the first time again. Personally, I just like having all of my things. I don't want to lose them all of what I've been working to build up. And I haven't seen details on what they're going to do yet. Since there are classes and abilities in the game too, one of the things that I've become more hesitant on is what the future of this looks like. As more and more of these characters and abilities and things release, I typically enjoy the different ways and the classes and the volume of gameplay and the experiences that provides. It also can get very overwhelming, especially to like keep the entire player base together. In the long run, so many additions can become overwhelming for people. I'll say too, with the clunkiness of the quests being made easier, some of that content of trying to search for where something is for 2 hours, speeds up the rate that you can do missions. I like that personally a lot, but there's also a need for often more content when you can complete things easier. And I'm sure finding specific things later in the game will become more difficult, even if it's telling you where to go for it. But that in combination with what the end game of this is actually going to be, you don't want to make it to the end of the game and feel like there's nothing really to do after you've completed all the missions. This was a big time how I felt in DMZ, for example. Compounded that you couldn't exfil infinite cash in that game, so you hit a cash cap and then there's literally nothing you can do other than go in and just drop your money. It was not great. We had to just come up with and make our own fun in it. Personally, I loved how Tarkov, you could accumulate more forever and have that be a bragging right on top of the labs runs at the end of the game, these special high-tier areas that you had to pay to get into, which this game does have a similar element of, and maybe even has some unique places for. They have 7 different maps, even just at launch here, and on each of these you can go into this high-tier version of them, but I haven't been able to get into any of those and test it out yet. And I will say, this is not an easy game in general. Even though they have made a lot of it easier, it's not going to be instantly understandable. Like typically a battle royale would be, just be the last person alive. This could be a hurdle for a lot of people to even get into it in the first place. I mean, the fact that are you even still listening to me here? I don't know. I'm also a bit concerned that they are spreading themselves too thin, which can happen when you are doing such an all-encompassing thing. Are we going to get enough maps for the multiplayer side for it to really be enjoyable? Often this is the downside to a lot of games that they only focus on multiplayer, and we got to wait 3 months for Battlefield to drop a DLC. Those types of games typically need a lot of content. Interestingly, they do have that ranked option for it, which maybe that could help, although there hasn't been enough players when I've tried to queue it to get it to start and try it myself. There are tanks and choppers in this game too, but definitely not as many variations as Battlefield, or really the focus of what the game has to offer. I didn't see any jets either. This game's doing all of that. 2042 didn't even attempt a campaign. This game's doing the campaign too, but what I've seen so far, it does look like it's promising. Besides just supporting all of the content, though, they are going to need enough players to actually fill all of these games. There is AI in especially the multiplayer I've seen, but doing 32v32 and then having all of these individual maps for the extraction and then a hardcore version of them with a higher tier for each of the maps, like, you need a solid player base for this. It's going to have to pull off a pretty big pull. And in all of these games, the beginning missions, I always have a fantastic time with, but a lot of times at the end, they just become such a giant pain, I don't even like doing them. I don't know if they've solved whatever that feeling is for me. I haven't gotten to it yet. And kind of a cool thing, unlocking camos and skins, you can extract certain Easter eggs to unlock skins in this game. But my guess is long-term, this is going to be part of the monetization for them. That being said, I hope they do have cool rewards, like with what Call of Duty even does with their skins now. They have so many great options that you can just earn by playing the game. Animated camos and things that can apply to everything else. Not necessarily that this game needs some of the insane skins that game has, but that same extent of being able to unlock things and, you know, show off by playing the game. And then, of course, this is an alpha, so to full release, they may also put some of these things behind a paywall, making it harder to unlock or whatever, just for the sake of being able to monetize of what we're already having a good experience of so far in the alpha. We don't know. So those are some of the things that I'm going to be watching for. As for what I'd kind of like to see them add, I think no-brainer. We all have to mention here is proximity chat. This is something that I think most players, especially in a lot of the games that I've been playing now, absolutely love. It adds such a cool, different dynamic to it, whether you want to like try and team up with somebody to complete something. Do you trust them? Do you not? You can have some funny engagements with it. It can be some good content. Also, this game, and really none of these games that I've played, have really mastered the teammate actions counting towards your own missions. So if you're playing with a buddy and you're both trying to complete a mission, he might complete this one, but then you got to come back and do the same thing for your mission that you're also trying to complete. The credit doesn't count to both of you. There's a lot of frustrations there, and I get it's probably really hard to do, especially when everybody's on different tasks, and I would say that should be a priority to try and nail down to give it a good experience so people can just play with their friends and get multiple things done and progress. In a similar note, I want more indicators for what quest items I'm actually looting. One of the early missions that I did, just extracting medical items, I didn't know which medical items I actually needed, so I kept exfilling with different things. It didn't count. Some things they do have an indicator for, I have seen, but just more consistent across the board, and that also could be just because it is an alpha. The initial offering here, though, is very impressive. At least I'm impressed. But by all means, tell me what you think in the comments down below. Are you an extraction player and excited for this? Have you never played one? This one's maybe caught your eye and you're interested? Maybe you're just still not sold. All of these are just too weird. Let me know. I'll most likely be streaming more of this, especially when it launches, and I'll be playing some more Arena Breakout as well. A lot of you guys are playing. I'll add a channel for that as well in my Discord server, but I'm also streaming right here on YouTube now. So if you see me live, come stop by, say what up, maybe even tell me in person. But that's for this one. Thanks so much for watching.